Reverend Beth Rambikur, our Director of Connectional Ministries for the Desert Southwest Conference, is joining us now. She's going to talk to us about ways where we can be in connection with each other during this difficult COVID-19 time.
Hello, friends. It is great to be joining you today. And I am going to be going over different ways to form collaboration. I've been talking to my staff this week and sharing how exciting I feel that this time is, because we do really have to push outside of our comfort zone and try things in different ways. And I compared it to maybe when John Wesley was banned from preaching in pulpits in England. Suddenly he had to discover a completely different way of doing ministry, and hence outdoor preaching was born. Well, not born, but rediscovered by John Wesley. So maybe we are in that time. And of course, that was an exciting time of collaboration and change, and things moved quickly and things changed on a day-to-day basis. So I really appreciated what Patrick shared earlier, which was that we are all on a learning curve right now. And some of your churches have been doing online worship for years. You have a lot of experience with live streaming and creating meaningful worship for people who are not in a venue. A lot of our churches, this is brand new territory. So I always say, when we venture into the unknown, you've got to have a healthy sense of adventure and also a good sense of humility, because we're definitely going to make mistakes along the way. I wanted to share some different resources that we hope that you will take advantage of in this time. And I want also to say that if during this event you didn't find what you were looking for, we have other things that are coming up, and hope that this is kind of a springboard to continue building collaborative conversations, to invite all of you who are doing the work in the field to share with each other what's working. So the first thing I wanted to share with you is a denomination-wide resource that our friends at the, I think that it's UMCOM have put together, Communications have put together for us. Let's see, I did not do that right. I apologize. Speaking of humility. Here we go. So one of the wonderful resources we have available to our churches right now and to our friends is an online resource called Find a Church. This is managed by the General Church, and it allows people, no matter where they are, to find a church. You can ask different questions, ask distance from, ethnicity, what languages are spoken, what ministries are offered, what's the size of the congregation, or you can search by a name. It lets you do all kinds of different searching. I quickly searched churches in a similar area in Phoenix because that's where I'm located, and got these up. And I want to show you what kind of information is available on the Find a Church web page. If you go to Dayspring United Methodist Church, which is the church that I attend, I'm charged out of that community, you will find their website, their physical address, who their pastor is, a statement, a picture of where you can find them on Google Maps, different types of information, their worship services, their mailing address. And if you are a pastor and you go onto this and you find that your information is not correct, you can click Update Church. And this will direct you to a site that you can then log into, and they will send you back a form so that you can update your information. We recommend that this be a time that all of you check your Find a Church presence and see what your church, what the General Church says about your church on that site, and update your information. This is a great time to make sure people know who you are. And if you are offering online capability, you can let them know that when they send back the form. So that's our Find a Church place. Another place that you can find fantastic web resources, and we've been sharing about that today, is the Western Jurisdiction Online Worship Closed Facebook page. This has just been an incredible gathering of information. Lots of different people have been sharing lots of things about how they do worship, what's working, what doesn't work, what kinds of questions they have. So I definitely recommend you take advantage of using this online gathering space, sharing what you're doing and learning from others. Once you, when you try to access it, it will, if you haven't already done so, you will need permission to get on. I think Patrick covered that, and your director of communication for your conference will make sure that you can get access to that page. Some other places that you can find different information. I've been checking our different annual conference web pages, and all of our annual conferences are working as hard as they can to make sure that they are responding to what's going on. And I noticed today that, let's see if I did that right. I did not. I noticed today that there are a couple of different annual conferences that are advertising they are advertising their churches that are gathering online or that have online worship. We hope that probably more churches will join that movement. So for example, the Pacific Northwest website has a place that you can go right on their front page to find other churches that are worshiping online. Additionally, the Desert Southwest Conference, if you go to our homepage, How to Worship Online, and then scroll to the bottom, you will find our online church presences, those churches that have let us know that they're worshiping online. If you are a worshiping online church and you want to share that, get that into your director of connectional ministries, your director of communication. Let somebody know so that that resource can be shared. Some other things we want to share with you. We've got some other webinars that are coming up this week that we hope you will take advantage of, including so today was our church online. We're going to do alternatives to online. As many of you brought up, you work in rural communities or you work with people who simply do not have the ability to be doing things online. We hope that we hope to offer some ideas and spark some conversation about how to resource people in this time when we can't gather in person, if you are one of those communities that can't meet online. And then on March 20th, we're going to be talking specifically about different types of technology and equipment that can be used, including electronic giving resources. We hope that you will sign up for one of these. Next week, we're going to start a series of community discussions. This was a webinar, so you logged in and panelists are talking, you're sharing questions through chat. Next week, what we're hoping to do are offer some open, free source conversations. So you can come on and share with each other what's working for you, what isn't working, what have you found that you have used that gets great results, and what would you recommend people not do. So we have on March 23rd, tools for doing education and meetings online. On the 24th, we'll be doing congregational care and nurturing at a time of social distancing. March 25th, we'll be offering spiritual formation for families with children. March 26th, we will be offering different ways that we can think about Easter and Holy Week, especially if we continue to be under small group meeting restrictions, and how to promote giving at this time on March 27th. We decided to make those all be at 10 o'clock Arizona time, which is, I think we're the same as Pacific right now. So 10 a.m. is the set time for those. Please know that you need to register the same way you did for this webinar in order to get into these. And if you are wondering, gee, I have something I'd love to talk about, but it's not here, we would love for you to email Christina Dillabo, our Director of Communications, and let her know what you're thinking about. We had some of you ask today, could we do a community conversation with churches that are already doing live stream worship? And the answer is absolutely. We just need to set a time and get the information out there. So let us know if you're interested in that. Those are some of the online workshops that are coming up. Another resource, some of you have asked questions about what you can and can't offer in live stream worship in terms of liturgy. I'm certainly not an expert, but I wanted to go over with you that we do have some information on our website. They've already referred to this, right? The live stream basics for churches, copyright considerations. Go back and rewatch the first part of the CCLI information from this video. We offer other conversations, different things you might want to check out. And then the Desert Southwest Conference is trying to build an online liturgy resource. This would be something similar to what you can find at Discipleship Ministries, another great place to access online resources. They have created a landing site specifically for this period of time and offer you all kinds of information about things you can use, different ways to think about worship, liturgies that are open source so you can use them, some of the other stuff that we've covered. But we're also inviting you, if you wish, to submit liturgy. This needs to be something you have originally written and created, and the caveat is you need to be able to give us permission to use it. So other people will be using this and they might not cite you. They might not say, hey, Beth Rambikur wrote that amazing piece of liturgy. And that is specifically why we're creating this. It's an open source liturgy platform so that people who want to share their work and are not worried about copyright issues can. However, please do not share anybody else's work on there. That's a huge copyright violation, and we'll find out. So, and then those resources will be available hopefully tomorrow as things start coming in here. And you can access those on dsc.org, worship online. And we hopefully will be able to share those with our other jurisdictional contacts so that lots of people have access to that. Let's see, what else can I share? Stop. Okay, that is all of me talking at you. I know that there have been some questions. Yeah. Candace, I see a question here from you. No, wait, did I? Something about multi-site worship? How do we put our multi-site second campus on Find a Church? Great question, Candace. Again, you'll want to go to Find a Church and put in your church information and then scroll down to Update Church. And that will give you access to a submission, an entry submission login that will then trigger them to email you back a form so you can update your information. I will say that right now everything's a little bit slower than usual, and part of that is because of the amount of people online and then the volume of requests that our general agencies and our conferences are receiving. So if you don't hear back, just keep trying. Somebody will get to you.
Hey,
Other
Beth,
questions? Yes.
I think we also need to remember that our friends at United Methodist Communication Discipleship Ministries are recovering from the tornado in Nashville. Some of them, their houses were destroyed, and they're still here working for the church. So they're an amazing group of people.
Really great reminder there, Greg. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. You've offered some amazing resources and just a jam-packed is jam-packed time with great resources. We appreciate you and all the work that you and the other directors of Connectional Ministries do for all of us, with all of us, on a daily basis. So one thing I want to clarify about the Find a Church and why to offer your information about doing church online to your director of to your director of communications is because of what Beth's talking about resourcing each other and taking advantage of what's available. If you can't do it well or don't have the time to do it well, or whatever the situation is, there are people out there that are already doing it. And if you're willing to open up your church, your online virtual space for others to take advantage, there are many churches out there that don't have the capability, the equipment, even internet access, but they still have a church community to pastor over. So if they can borrow your sermon, not use it on, in place of you, but send their people to watch your online worship service, that would be great. And so if we can have a one-stop shop to be able to share with people, United Methodist Communications do have a page where there are already a list of churches that are offering worship online, and that's great. We'll include that link as well in the chat. But you know, there's something to be said to be able to say, oh yeah, that's the pastor that was at my church, you know, however many years ago, or oh, that's our sister church that's just down the street, or our sister church that's across the jurisdiction. You know, we're a close community. We're certainly open to having new and more people let our family grow, but at this time we really need to lean not just on our brothers and sisters, but our cousins and aunts and uncles throughout the jurisdiction. You know, God is mighty, God is great, and we're all doing some amazing things. And right now is a time where we can be a blessing to someone else. And so that's where that comes from, about offering your online church services, even if it's rough. You know, it's helpful to see that message from somebody that you recognize. The Find a Church, in case you're not aware, that's one of the first things that pops up if somebody that's not already United Methodist is Googling a church near me, or maybe is United Methodist and wants to find out, well, my church said they're closed, so where do I go for worship? I'm going to Google. That's one of the first sites that pops up. So you want to make sure your information on there is accurate and includes any online worship or online gatherings that you're going to offer for the community. So be sure to go in there and take a look at what's there and update it as necessary. All right, so we're now down to the last 15 minutes, and we're going to go through the Q&A. You can still type more questions, and we will be offering this recording to every one of the directors of communications in the Western jurisdiction to use these recordings as they will. Here in the Desert Southwest Conference, we'll be chopping it up by topic and posting those shortened videos onto that same website, that webpage that Beth mentioned, dscumc.org/worship-online. So let's go to the questions. I'm going to ask the questions, and if our panelists want to chime in and answer, now's the time. So top of the list, Craig Miller asks, can we pre-record our own recording and use it?
Yes, that would actually be a better thing to do, is to, I'm assuming you're talking about having your musicians make a recording and then include that in your stream, and the answer is yes, as long as you have licensing permissions that covers that particular music. And for that, you'd need to do a lookup using your licensing provider. I wanted to mention one other licensing provider that I don't think has come up. We haven't mentioned Christian Copyright Solutions today, have we? Right, and it's important to understand the difference. It's a big company that also is owned by the same parent company as CCLI. So they play nicely together. And there is a lot of overlap in their catalogs. But if you tend to use more secular music, like somebody in the chat asked about, in the Q&A asked about country and Western music, for example. Well, the CCS has all of the ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC catalogs available as part of your licensing permissions. Whereas CCLI, the default CCLI license, does not necessarily include those huge catalogs, which are a lot of secular music is in those catalogs. And in fact, a lot of even the United Methodist stuff that's not necessarily covered by CCLI is covered under either ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC. So if your church really wants to have a big, wide open permission, the biggest licensing permissions, you ought to take a look at CCS, Christian Copyright Solutions. I had a chat with them just a week ago, and they're a little more expensive, and it's not the one being granted to the churches by the conference, but it is certainly worth taking a look at.
Thank you, David. And then Lisa Fitzpatrick is asking, we're thinking of a worship page. We would have prayers and liturgy and a recorded message. We're thinking of the songs as links or embedded video directly from the source, i.e. Vimeo or publisher's official video. Does that work and meet license requirements? Greg, can you answer that one?
Yeah, so that's a great idea, but you still have to keep all these other considerations we've talked about in mind. So if you link to someone else's YouTube video, if you go to where Amy Grant's video of something is up or whatever, then you're not responsible for that licensing. You're only providing a link to someone else's content and on YouTube. So the licensing responsibility is the person who uploaded it. A link on your site is not a copyright issue. But if you load a piece of liturgy or a piece of poetry, and I'll tell you, there's some particular poetry authors that have slammed churches with huge demands for money when they found their stuff on their websites. So this bank that Beth is offering about liturgy is a wonderful resource, as well as what the folks at the Discipleship Ministries has opened the licensing on some of theirs. So, or it's a time to be creative and write something. So as long as you're doing original material, you can put anything, and creating a worship page so that people can, again, come to it when they want is a great idea. And any link you do to a video or a music product of someone else's that's on their servers, you're not responsible for the licensing.
Okay, and then the next question from Bob Cutlip. He's asking if he can use Zoom. Oh, I lost my question. There it is. If he can use Zoom to record the sermon and have approved music and then upload it to his website or somewhere.
The answer is yes. If you have the pro version of Zoom, you could then load it to the cloud and then display it there. I'm not sure that that's necessary if you're just doing a one-person thing. Probably having a trusted friend record you with your phone with a good microphone, like David talked about, which would be needed for any of this. Then you'd have a recording on your phone. You could load it. You could load it to a Dropbox and provide a link on your website or in an email. You could upload it to iCloud if you're an iCloud user, and all of these things have a way to share a link. Or you could upload it into the church's Facebook. And when, we didn't touch on this. When you load a video into Facebook, if you're looking at that video and you right click on it, you can copy the URL. And even someone who does not have Facebook can go to that URL and look at it. They do not need a Facebook account for a publicly posted video. That's an important thing. You're watching the video. If you go to pop it up in the larger screen, and then on a PC right click, I assume on a Mac it'd be a hold click. You should get an option of copy the URL or show the URL or copy the URL for the video.
Richard Bentley asked about how do you broadcast a worship service on Zoom? And I'm not sure if this question is about like where do you send it to, or earlier in the stream, I guess, in this webinar, our Zoom rep showed us, just adding those little options to stream to YouTube or to stream to Facebook. Of course, with any of those, your church would have to have that type of account first. So you got to establish that presence to be able to connect it to your Zoom broadcast. But I'm not sure that there's an option for just streaming online through Zoom without having it live somewhere. Go ahead, Craig.
I know Richard's very familiar with Zoom for meetings. So one of the questions is really for you, Christina. We're doing this in the webinar format. Was that an added on tool? Did you have to buy something extra to do webinar?
Yes, and it matters. You also have to, there's different levels of webinar you can do to 500 people or 1,000 people or more.
Okay. So if you want to do a format like this, where where you have control over who is presenters and who is participants, you would need to do it with this manner. With the basic pro license, you can have up to 100 people in your Zoom meeting. And when you set the meeting up, you can tell it like video off for some of the people, and you can try to control things that way, but it can get a little bit wild if you, I've never done a meeting with more than about 30 people in it. There are some hand raising things, but it's more meeting like. But the other thing is, so part of it depends on what you mean by broadcast. If you had a Zoom meeting with 20 people and you made a recording, when you do the recording in Zoom, you want to tell it to not to save it on your local computer, but save it in the Zoom cloud. And then afterwards, you go back to your page and it'll give you the link that you can then share in any way you want. You can put, depending on your copyright restrictions, you could put that in Facebook, or you could send it out in the church email. Say, hey, here's the group that gathered this morning if you'd like to watch along.
I noticed there was a comment on our Western Jurisdiction Facebook group about, Zoom's blowing up right now, because they are opening up their services really quickly to ridiculous amount of people. So I'm sure they're busy trying to catch up. So in the meantime, an alternative, if you're broadcasting like we are right now through Zoom, what I chose, just to ensure that I wasn't going to have any issues with the loss of my video right now in this really fast changing time, I'm recording to my computer. And even if you were to record it to the cloud, you could download it. But once you've done that, once you have that video file, you can upload it to, say, YouTube, Vimeo, wherever you have your account. And you can even do that privately or unlisted if you want to be able to just share it to a certain group. I think for our purposes for worship, once your church has a YouTube page or account, start encouraging people to subscribe. That way they get an email when your worship service is online and ready to go. They don't have to wait for it to be on the page or added to Facebook. It's just another way of doing things, but all good. All right, next question. Rocky Cascolan, sorry. Can a rearrangement of remix of a song in the public domain be live streamed with no restrictions? David, do you know the answer to that?
So the qualifier was that the song's in the public domain, right? If that was in his question, yeah. And yes. You can take anything that by public domain, by default, you can take and do whatever you want with it. So you can make your own arrangement. Now you could copyright your arrangement, and then you could, post restrictions. But it's a lot nicer to put it out there and make your arrangement public domain for other people as well.
So, and might as well dive in just a touch on the difference between public domain and copyright.
Right. So copyright, everything, the minute it's created, is technically copyrighted. You don't have to submit everything to the U.S. Copyright Office to have it copyrighted. You can claim copyright on something as a creator right away.
But I guess with copyright free versus public domain.
Yeah, so that's pretty much the same thing, unless what it is there's different levels of licensing. You'll encounter that if you go onto, for example, Wikipedia. And Wikipedia has a little cousin resource called Wikimedia, which is like the pictures and maps and some other things that show up. And so there's the GNU or GNU type licensing you might have heard of, and there are different levels. There's please give attribution. All right, you can put your stuff out there and say, yeah, my stuff's free, but please give me credit. Or there's just wide open, unrestricted licensing. So stuff when you use the term public domain, that's pretty much an umbrella term for, it's wide open.
And I think public domain usually applies to an older item that the copyright has expired.
Exactly.
And when the copyrights used to be shorter, so there are many things were in the public domain, and then Congress rewrote the law with a longer window. So now things stay in private control longer. You also want to look for there be licensing for free with attribution, no commercial use. So my interpretation has always been sharing it with a church congregation is not a commercial use, it's a nonprofit use, because I'm not using it as an illustration in a book that I then sell for an image format. So if you're not deriving further profit from it, you're still in a non-commercial application.
Thanks, guys. So we've got one more question. I realize there's a lot more, but the last one that we're going to have time for is from David Harris. He says, with Zoom, what are the parameters with using a sermon reference, which was given by someone else?
Well, I was kind of going to ask if that was a Beth question. Otherwise, I'll take a stab at it.
And I might have missed it. Can you read it again? I'm sorry.
David
Let me just
Harrison-
take a stab, and Beth, you listen. If you're using a sermon by somebody else, you have the same responsibility to avoid plagiarizing that you would standing in front of a congregation. So if you're reading someone else's material, you need to say, I'm using someone else's material. It's even better if you contacted them and say, hey, do you mind? So you have to be clear that you are not plagiarizing. Just like when you cite from someone's book, you need to say what the book is. Make sure that people don't think your sermon is your own creative content if it's not. That's respectful, that's Christian, and that's the law. So that would be the general thing. Those things don't change from when you're face-to-face from when you're online.